Hello. I am hoping that the microphone is picking up. I just tested it, but I'm not seeing the reassuring little green blobbies here. So, anyhow, I had forgotten that it was Friday, to be honest. I have been operating on a kind of odd schedule because we had a snow and ice event here in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And although this is not something that I am unfamiliar with, um, it is definitely not something that other people in the area are familiar with. So I found out that, let's see here, we had discussed it earlier in the week, my boss and I, but then she let me know that, hang on, I am doing links because I'm getting asked in various places where the link is. So, hey Beth, hi Ben. And so that's why I'm not looking at the camera. Anyhow, so early in the week, my boss let me know that because she is a sane, rational woman, and goodness gracious, I'm going to miss her, that if there was really going to be a weather event, that we would be closing down both Thursday and Friday, even though she thought Friday we might be able to get there, but she decided just do a 4-day weekend. And bless her, she paid me for these 2 days. So this afternoon, I was thinking that it felt like Sunday, like my weekend should be coming to a close, because 2 days, this makes sense, right? And we were talking about the fact that it's not Sunday, and then I really didn't even process the whole thing of it's Friday until my friend Doug, hi Doug, thank you, reminded me that it was Friday and I should be planning to do a live stream. So here I am. It's been a very quiet, relaxing couple of days. I left the house today because my son's work canceled on him yesterday and he didn't have to worry about work. But they did not do so today, and as a matter of fact, he was a little irked because he got a perky email from corporate saying everybody's going to have cabin fever and want to go watch movies. It was a day. A single day. One day does not lead to cabin fever. But for whatever reason, we had to drive him over to work, and at 10 o'clock this evening, we will go back and pick him up. And I wasn't too worried about getting him to work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The roads were wet. There are definitely some slushy patches. And I am worried about getting him home because the roads were wet and it is now well below freezing. And it will have been dark and freezing for several hours by the time we go get him. And black ice is not fun, ever. Like, I cannot think of a single instance of black ice that was fun.
Not if you're in it.
So, I'm not looking forward to that particular little drive. And I will leave Sanford at home because there's no point for the two of us to get tangled up in a mess if something happens. Backup emergency husband. It's kind of part of the point, isn't it? So let's see here. I spent yesterday where we were technically snowed in the house. We got a whole inch of snow. Mom, they do not sand the roads here, nor do they salt. They did some kind of ice treatment where they were spraying something on the roads. But other than that, they've done nothing. I don't think they have the equipment or the materials to do anything. Since this happened only worse last year, I think they should probably consider something, but the DFW is an awfully big mess of a conglomeration of little cities that the big city is overgrown and into. So I don't even know that there's places where they can do anything, because I know that just recently there was an unincorporated section that had been grown into and around and had become basically some big subdivisions, but it wasn't an actual town. And I think this year it was officially incorporated finally. But yeah, no, it's a mess, and I just am happy not to have to go to work and to have a 4-day weekend. Yesterday I spent my day cooking and baking. I did bread, I did cookies, I did soup beans. Today I didn't really do any cooking at all. And as a matter of fact, a minute ago, I reminded my husband we haven't eaten dinner and probably should. And since I'm doing this, he's volunteered to do that.
Volunteer?
Voluntold? So, and I'm going to be making a cake. So, those of you that also follow my blog may have seen the post of asking for votes on which cake I should make. And the funny thing is that even though I said I don't have the ingredients to make these cakes, people were still voting for them. And honestly, I had already been planning on making a demon cake, because until I was going through that book in the cake section, I had no idea that there was a counterpart to angel food cake. So angel food cake and demon cake, and I'm like, I've made an angel food cake, but I'm gonna have to make a demon food cake now, or a demon cake. So I am looking forward to that, but in order to make that, I need wine, because I don't have any wine in the house that is suitable to... Oh, hey, Ian. Okay, that's good. That's what they were spraying on the roads. I wasn't sure what that was. I could see they had sprayed something, but I didn't know what it was. In order to make the demon cake, I need wine, and I don't really have any wine in the house other than dry marsala that I bought to make tiramisu. And I need brandy, and we don't drink brandy, so until I started looking at some of these cakes, I never really had a reason to buy brandy, but now I have an excuse to buy brandy. And I also need preserved ginger, because I like preserved ginger, so when we have that in the house, it doesn't last long enough to get made into cakes. Oh, and my son is letting me know that they are letting him out of work early at 8 o'clock. So I'm either going to cut the live stream short or send Sanford to drive on the ice. So
Send the husband to drive on the ice.
He's saying to send him. Yes, I did invent dark side cookies, Doug. So I'm definitely looking forward to making the demon cake. And tomorrow, if the weather is decent, I may venture out to the liquor store and pick up some brandy and wine. And I'm sure I can acquire preserved ginger somewhere, even though I don't know off the top of my head where I'm going to get preserved ginger. So, yes, but the votes on the cake were interesting because even though I said I didn't want to do fairy gingerbread because you have to cook it on the bottom of a pan, and I've only got small pans. Hey, Josh. I had 4 votes for fairy gingerbread. And I'm like, it's a wafer cookie, and I'm sure it's going to be tasty. Although, something about the cakes, I mean, these cakes date back to the 1880s. And, tastes have changed. I have run into this before when cooking for the vintage kitchen recipes, that recipes that were considered like really nice recipes back in the day are a little lacking to the modern palate. So we'll see on some of these. I mean, the fairy gingerbread is probably going to be quite tasty. The other one that got a lot of votes, and I'm also going to have to make this, is the federal cake. And but the federal cake is basically a fruit cake. It's what fruitcake was supposed to be. And hang on just a second. Sanford, honey, can you text Johan and let him know that we are aware that we need to pick him up? So Central Market has preserved ginger. I will look for Central Market, Ian. Also, Ian had commented that I should make sure and wash the vehicles after the weather passes. Yes, that was kind of an assumption. I can't tell you how many vehicles in my life, and I haven't owned that many. I have had to lost to rotten frames from salt and sand damage. So yes, washing vehicles after the snow and the slush passes. So fruity bricks koala is what we think of as fruitcake now, but that's not what fruitcake was in the first place. The wedding cake in this, which so it's Miss Parloa's new cookbook and marketing guide. It was copyrighted in 1880, and it is delightful if you come in and you're reading it from a historical point of view. But the wedding cake in Miss Parloa's book, and if you go look at my blog under the last couple of days, you'll see actually a picture of the page. She says that the wedding cake will last for years. And I am dubious about this, but I also kind of want to try and do it for science. The thing is, the wedding cake, I would have to scale it way back because it makes 8 loaves. Cakes were not the way we think of cakes back then. They did sheets, but a lot of cakes were like pound cakes, and they were made in a loaf pan, what they call a deep pan. But anyhow, so the wedding cake makes the wedding cake makes 8 loaves, so I could make the wedding cake and inflict some of it on coworkers or the North Texas troublemakers, and I could put aside a couple of loaves and stability test them over a period of a couple of years. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a whole thing. But okay, so other votes for cakes were the Ames cake, which looks like a fairly straightforward sponge style cake, as does the silver cake, which there were also votes for. Shrewsbury cake looks more like a cookie. And so that's the other thing too, is that there's a cookie recipe in this cookbook. And it's very interesting. It's a very kind of just bland, generic, this is a cookie. Cookies, as we know them, they were called cakes. And this is why the English biscuit is a thing, too, instead of cookies. Because there was a divergent point in food evolution, so to speak. Anyhow, so some of the cakes in the Miss Parloa book are rolled cakes. So they're actually rolled out and cut out like cookies that we think of now. And the fairy gingerbread that people kept voting on me to make is a wafer cookie. You cook it on the bottom of the pan, and you cut it immediately when it comes out of the oven because it goes all crispy and dry. And so they're wafer cookies, and somebody suggested that I do those and then fill them with something, and they'd probably be spectacular that way, and they're not wrong. It's just more work than I wanted to necessarily take on in the apartment kitchen. So the winning vote, though, with 5 votes, was for the ladies' cake, which is a nice sponge. And sponge cakes are, you make the batter, and you take the egg whites and you make them into a meringue, basically. But you whip them to stiff peak, and then you fold that in. And that's what provides a lot of the leavening in very old-fashioned cake recipes. In fact, the Miss Parloa book, I had to look up something because I did not recognize what saleratus was. So saleratus was the precursor to what we now know as baking soda, or sodium bicarbonate. And I actually put a link in the blog post to a description of how it was made. And it was not as leavening in function, as it wasn't as active a chemical ingredient as sodium bicarbonate is. Ooh, RK, I am looking forward to seeing how that comes out for you. I'm going to do the ladies' cake tomorrow. I opted not to do it today because, well, frankly, I was being lazy today. I cleaned up from all my cooking yesterday, and that was about it for me in the kitchen. Um, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to hearing how the demon cake comes out for you. I'm probably not going to do two cakes this weekend. Part of why I didn't cook a bunch today is that my dear husband pointed out that we were all going to pop from eating too much if I kept baking at the rate I was starting at yesterday. What can I say? Being snowed in makes me want to bake. Yeah. So I'm going to do the lady's cake. And we have strawberries in the refrigerator, so I'm going to probably turn it into a strawberry shortcake. And it should be really, really yummy. Um, Sanford is not a big fan of frosted cakes, so I tend not to frost or ice. Uh, Sometimes I'll do like half the cake, or if I make cupcakes, I'll frost some but not the others. Frosting, a lot of the older applications was more to keep the cake from drying out. Um, some of the older frostings are not particularly appetizing looking, and they weren't necessarily, and they certainly weren't decorate. Excuse me, bubbles. They certainly weren't decorations like we think of cakes as being decorated now. One of the things I included in the blog post is um, a little inclusion that she made on how to decorate a cake for small children that they would like to have like their name written on it. And I was like, oh, that's so cute because again, this is a Victorian era. Children were meant to be seen and not heard. And it was really only the beginning point of there even being any kind of an industry that was focused on children. So the fact that she included that was kind of an interesting little quirk. Um, Cream cheese is good. I do a buttercream that is not the commercial buttercream, but I do that if I'm going to be piping decorations because it's really the most stable. I have made Italian meringue in the past, and the stuff is amazing, but it's a pain in the butt to make. Very few people make it these days, and there's a reason for that. Um, yeah, gingerbread and is a favorite around here. I never frost it. I know that a lot of people glaze gingerbread, but we do. Um, we do gingerbread here, but we usually just do it like bread. And I have some interesting recipes for gingerbread. One of my readers sent in a family recipe that is a banana gingerbread, and it's good. You don't really taste the bananas in it. But ooh, mascarpone cheese on gingerbread would be really, really yummy, koala. I could definitely go for that. Uh, Yeah, breaking the local grocer with bicarbonate of soda, I understand why they had a problem with that, but then again, it's the same issue that people have when you tell them that you've been drinking dihydrogen monoxide. She says as she takes a sip of her water. Um, it, the chemistry education these days. Get off my lawn. uh, which actually brings me to something else that I have been contemplating because, well, right now I am either going to find a job before the end of the month or I'm not. And at that point, if I don't, we have savings. We're okay for a while. I can keep looking. I have been slowly putting in applications, and it is a soul-sucking process that I absolutely hate. And it's worse this time because I'm in a job I love and I don't want to leave. But I have spoken a couple of times with my boss, and she is working on some ideas to try and save the business, but she has encouraged me um, to keep looking and try to find something, because if she can't pull a rabbit out of her hat, then um, Ian, I've heard you tell that story, and it is funny. They were like, "What has this kid been learning overseas?" Um, However, the job hunt, if it doesn't go well, and if I do wind up unemployed for a little while, I've been thinking about what I need to be doing during that time. I mean, obviously looking for jobs and putting in applications and hopefully getting some interviews. And I managed to acquire an interview suit, even though it's a little more casual than my normal. But it's still blazer and slacks, and I've got button downs, and I'm good, I think. Um, However, if things go badly and I don't wind up with a position right away, there's a couple of big projects that I've been talking about working on that I will probably throw myself into, which one of which obviously would be to try and finish whichever novel I have that's closest to being finished right now, which is probably Tanager's Flight. And the other one is to work on the cookbook that I've been talking about for years, which I plan to do as a cookbook slash like homeschooling chemistry reference. So that that's been part of what stalled that for a long time. Um, was that I needed to figure out how to do a cookbook without making it full of color pictures, because a full color inside book is expensive. And I did not want to pass on that price to readers, nor frankly did I think that a lot of you were going to be willing to pay like $35 for my cookbook. So, took me a while, but I realized what I needed to do in order to do a cookbook was to do line art, black and white illustrations inside the cookbook. And I am finally at a point where I have the skills to do that. And so that's... Ian, you are a little troublemaker. See, this is why I'm having so much fun illustrating stories from Ian's childhood. And yes, I get to draw explosions for the Sapper Lizard story. Um, I plan to write, and yes, and it's going to be a homeschool kitchen chemistry book. I have actually talked about doing a book called Kitchen Chemistry for years, and I'd planned on writing it with my children, who didn't have a whole lot of interest in it, unfortunately. So that didn't happen earlier. And now at this point, with the kid being almost 17, working, and learning how to drive, I don't know how much cooking time I'm going to get with him. Not to mention that the apartment kitchen is kind of a little small for two of us to be working in it at the same time. When we have done cooking videos, there's a pass-through in the kitchen, and we actually have been setting up the camera there, and he'll be on the dining room side shooting into the kitchen while I'm working. Um, Ben, I don't know about doing a Kickstarter. I don't have a very large fan base, so I'm not sure. And that's why I also don't do a Patreon. I worry about delivering enough content to make it worth people's time to give me money. And I can be flaky, very flaky at times. So I don't want to have a month where I flake out and I don't do what I need to get done. The projects that I'm working on right now are pretty loose-ended. Speaking of which, I'm somewhat late, but Rattel Saga will be going to publication stage tomorrow, and possibly live in the coming week. We will see how the cover formatting flies. That's always a question. Yes, iodine and turpentine does make a lovely cloud of smoke and a lovely color. Um, But oh yes, one of these times I must talk about making flash paper, but that's a whole nother thing. So, and a lot of this too is the fact that I'm fighting anxiety because this is a very anxious making situation. Right now, everything's on me and my shoulders, and that scares the pants off me. So I want to have a day job. I don't want to be completely self employed. And even if I thought that I could generate enough income quickly enough to justify doing that, I'm, I'm just, yeah. Uh, I, once we get the kid out of the house and launched, and it's just the two of us, then things will change and I'll have a different attitude towards life and what we can do. And I keep looking at houses up where I'd like to live, and they're very affordable. So we could do where we want to live and live on much less of an income. And it would probably make us a whole lot happier than living down here in the city. But for right now, I'm not sure what I can do. So, yeah. And one of the things I didn't want to do on this live stream was be all down because that's what I've been struggling with. But that's the thing about these live streams is I have no filters, so whatever I'm thinking about is going to come out at y'all. And this is what I'm worried about right now. So, as far as writing fiction, I am 1,000 words into a story that needs to be 8,000 words long, and it's due by the end of the month. And if I can get my act together this weekend, I'll try and hack another couple hundred thousand. Oh my gosh. Not even John Ringo's that fast. Couple thousand words into that story. But I have been such a flibberty-gibbet, I have not been able to channel story, which is also why I'm talking about working on the chemistry and cookbook. Yeah, no, arcade, definitely Semper Gumby. And that's kind of been the motto of my life, to be honest. Semper Gumby. Always flexible. But, yeah. Pandas should not climb the Empire State Building to force cheese to fall. Do I need to text my panda friend? Well, with the chemistry and cookbook thing, I don't have to worry about retaining story. I just have to worry about organization. No, I don't think even Pam is that fast. And I need to catch up on some of Pam's, but I'm afraid I might have slid too far behind to catch up without a serious binge read. She is fast. And I mean, I have things that are on the back burner. I do covers. I've become very, very, very exclusive on my clientele for covers. And so that's a little bit of income there. And I can write. And we'll make ends meet. I mean, if I gotta go get a job in retail, I'll go get a job in retail. It's not like I haven't done that before. And we'll make ends meet. And we have enough in savings to keep us afloat for a while. So it's okay. If things come to things, then we will cut loose here from the apartment. It'll cost us a couple $1,000, and we'll go north where it's a whole lot cheaper to live, and we'll figure it out from there. So we have options. I'm trying not to just be anxious, but I'm anxious. I can't help it. It's hardwired into the brain, and I'm working on that too. Actually, that's been any of you that are in my Discord are seeing a veritable flood of quotes from a book that I have been reading. And if any of you struggle with ADD or ADHD, then it might be helpful for you as well. It's called Scattered, and it's by Dr. Gabor Mate, and it's quite good. I mean, I don't think I agree with 100% of what he's talking about in there, but he definitely touches on some stuff that really hit me and went, "Oh, yeah, okay. That's me. That's what's going on here." So I'm hoping that by kind of wrapping my head around what's going on in my head, that I can kind of get a handle on some of the anxiety that tends to take over when I'm dealing with stress, because this last year has been a hotbed of stress and anxiety for me. And I'm so glad that this didn't happen while Sanford was still in Ohio, because I would have been half distracted. I don't know. I mean, being down here and having friends nearby kept me going during 8 months of separation. But separation and dealing with not having him here with me would have been, I'm not sure what I would have done. They say the Lord doesn't give you more than you can deal with, and I think that was part of this. Oh. Ian, not that we would ever give instructions like that in a book, except maybe it'll go into the Sapper Lizard's book. But, Koala, I'm familiar with child-based attention distraction disorder. I've dealt with that for 23 years now. So, yes, you have to bring that one further into the line of sight and then hold still. So while he was working with a team of engineers, I bought him several amusing coffee mugs so that he always had something to entertain his team with. So, oh, I can just imagine Ian teaching homeschool. There was a meme photo that got shared on Facebook just the last few days or so. And I forget where it came out of, but they were talking about they're so shorthanded on substitute teachers that they're sending National Guardsmen in to be substitute teachers. Oh, New Mexico, Sanford says. And the comments under this photo were hilarious. And now I'm picturing Sanford and Ian and other sundry folks teaching at the homeschool co-op, and to be honest, it would be an excellent education. However, as a mother, oh, I had an unusual education. So I was homeschooled up through 9th grade when Mom gave up on my math and stuck me in a small Christian school. And among the other things that were part of my education was that I went into Civil Air Patrol at age 11 because I was a grade ahead in school, and at the time you only had to have gotten out of grade 6th grade, I think so, in order to join Civil Air Patrol. So I got involved in search and rescue training and wilderness survival and all kinds of interesting... be safe, please. He's off to brave the roads of... the roads of doom, he says. So my son works in a theater in the mall. And the ring road around the mall was not touched, and there are live oaks planted all the way around this mall, so they're also heavily shaded. When I dropped the kid off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the ring roads were in parts not even slush. It was still just like packed snowy ice. So I've already warned Sanford that he may have to, in order to navigate safely partway around the mall, he may have to actually go off the road and into the parking lot, which will be empty, and then come back onto the road just long enough to get around some of the curbs. But yeah, no, I honestly, I almost want to write that into a story. He is not going to get Brandy. He's not going to go any further than he has to. He's just going to go get the kid. So my child, no longer has a winter coat that fits him. And does he tell me this? No, he does not. He tells me this like the day before he's leaving to go up to New Hampshire for a 4-day weekend. This was last weekend. And informs me that he doesn't have a heavy coat. And we figure out that he's gotten bigger than both Sanford and I, and he can't find a coat that fits him. So off he goes to New Hampshire with two hoodies, two layers of hoodies. I had to yell at him today to get him to put on a hoodie to go to work. He was just going to go in his short-sleeved little uniform shirt. And, oh, no, Civics, Joshua, that would be Dr. Becky Jones, who's also in the chat, who I need to talk to you about scheduling for next tutoring session, but that's a whole different. Anyhow, so I had to yell at the boy, because 16-year-old boy, he doesn't want to put on a coat. God forbid that he wear a hoodie. And then he wants to walk home. Because he's worried, oh, look, I rate a troll today. We can make that go away, I think. So, and then I have to yell at him to make him take his hoodie to work because the child will not. All right, I can't make it go away. I don't know how to delete those. Anyhow, we'll ignore the troll. Don't feed the trolls. He wants to walk home on the ice at 20 degrees or whatever it is out there right now. And children, you survive, children, right? Because there are times, oh no, I take that back. It's 29 degrees out there. I swear, this is the same kid that would wander around the house in a hoodie and shorts and then complain about he's chilly, and I'm like, put pants on, maybe? I have a running joke with with him especially, that he needed to wear pants. And I was talking to him about this the other day. Actually, it's probably been about a month ago. And well, Koala, at least survival to teenagerhood. But I was talking to him about the multiple incidents where we were telling him to wear pants and more pants, and you can't just walk around the house in your underwear. And the funny thing was, after I was talking to him about this, No, Dr. Jones and Jim Curtis. You gotta have both of them for the full rounded experience. But, one thing that Facebook Memories is good for is it pops up and it reminds me of stuff that's happened for the last 10, 11 years. Let's see, my ex made my Facebook account in 2009, so yeah, it's been 13 years now. And it's kind of fun because it pops up with all these cute kid memories and stuff, including multiple occasions of us telling the child that he needs to wear pants. Actually, my kid would look really good in German lederhosen and heavy wool knee socks. He is very German, that one. And in fact, that he has the name Johann doesn't hurt any at all. But we have a solid dose of Germanic ancestry. We may find out in a few weeks exactly how much, because one of my daughters got a DNA kit for Christmas. So that should be amusing to see what the results are. Yeah, no, I would have to threaten him with dire things to get him to wear a lederhosen. I actually think it might be easier to get him into a kilt. Um, but um, yeah, no. The funny thing is, Sanford got a jury duty summons from Ohio. He's like, "Oh, good, I get to tell them no." Um, Yeah, lederhosen is expensive. So are kilts. I keep trying to get my husband into a kilt until he sees the price, and then he's like, "No, I don't want you to spend that much money on me." Um, how dare they say you're not Italian, koala? Are you Italian? I didn't think you were, but I could be wrong. Um, it's funny. I get to look at the. Well, it depends on the kilt, RK. Some of the tactic kilts are cotton, they're canvas. I think a boiled linseed kilt might be interesting. Linseed oil cotton duck would be interesting. True, true. The mental image that goes along with that one, Becky. Swim trunks that are lederhosen. Um, Northern Italian. An Alpine girl. I wonder if I still have the little brooch with the Edelweiss in it. I picked that up at a um, charity shop over in England about, well, a long time ago. Let's just put it that way. Ancestry is funny. The other person that got a DNA kit for Christmas would be my husband, because there are some mysteries in his past, and he's adopted, although he knows who his biological father was. Um, but he said for years that he wanted to do the DNA thing, so I got him a kit for Christmas. I think it's still sitting on his desk. I need to remind him he needs to spit in a cup. Yeah, well, I mean, wool kilts sound itchy scratchy too, so I'll bet the 511 kilt in ripstop fabric dries quickly at least. Trying to think, what was it I used to have? I had something that was this great fabric. I don't know. I mean, the DNA testing is, in theory, um, accurate, but I also sometimes wonder. It's interesting. It's interesting to see what we're doing with genetics, and I'm also have to wonder sometimes how accurate our genealogy records are. So wool itself can be itchy, and here's where I go off into the fiber thing that Beth will appreciate. So there are different kinds of wools, different kinds of sheep that produce wools. When I was an apprentice shepherdess, we raised merinos, which have ultra fine fibers, and Shetland, which also have ultra fine fibers, although their fleece is very different than a merino. The cross of a merino and a Shetland, which I owned a couple of because they weren't what the people I worked for wanted. But Shetland rams are agile and determined, which is even funnier when you realize that most merino ewes outweigh Shetland rams by a good 50 to 80 pounds. um, but bye, Becky. Enjoy. My best to bike. Um, so fiber, and then if you get fiber from a sheep that's been bred for meat, that stuff can be as scratchy as a Brillo pad, because the fiber is much coarser, so your cross section is different. And trying to remember, I think merino can go down to 20 nanometers. And don't quote me on that because I'm not looking at my reference materials right now. And you can put a newborn baby on merino wool and they will not have any irritation whatsoever. It is incredibly fine and soft. And it is one of those things that Australia has bred the best merinos in the world, and they don't export the top line merinos. They don't export the uh, artificial insemination. I might as well just say it and try not to find a euphemism for it. But they don't export the stems of frozen genetic material for merinos either, for the top line merinos. So I don't know if there still is, I'm sure there still is, that there's a program trying to breed the American line of merinos to be as good as the Australian line. But I mean, there's also the fibers from other things. I mean, merino wool is wonderful. Beth raises goats, and actually cashmere, which of course is world renowned for being super soft and expensive. It's also so warm. I have a couple of cashmere sweaters that I've picked up, usually at thrift shops. It's funny because my kids tried to figure it out one time. I'll walk down a line of sweaters at a thrift shop touching all of them because I can tell just by touching the shoulders what the fabric is. I believe they do export the wool, RK, just not the animals that produce the wool. But I can tell just by touching what the sweater is made out of, and that's how I've wound up with a couple of cashmere sweaters for pretty darn cheap. Joshua, there's a reason that when I was writing Tanager Fledglings and I was talking about bioengineering and bioengineered animals in particular, that I included sheep that had been specifically engineered to be ultra, ultra fine. But then again, I also wrote Beth Donovan into that book, so... Yeah, koala, that one, that is funny. But there's all kinds of fibers. I mean, when I was much younger and hanging out with fiber artists, I knew somebody that would brush out her Great Pyrenees dog and save his undercoat. And trust me, when a Pyr blows their coat in the spring, there's a lot of fiber. And it was long enough to spin easily, and she did. She spun the dog's coat and made some beautiful stuff with it. I got to see it. Yes, mohair. Thank you, Beth, because I was trying to remember which specific type of goats you had. She has mohair goats. No, I knew you didn't have cashmere, but talking about goats and fiber reminded me of cashmere. So the only problem with the dog fiber was that even after it had been cleaned, because wool has to be cleaned before it can be spun and woven in, knitted or whatever. Raw wool is, well, I mean, even aside from just the general dirt and junk that get caught, okay, it smelled even dry. It smelled like dog. Yeah, no, I'm sure it smelled even worse wet, but even dry, if you smelled it, you could smell dog. And I mean, I'm trying to remember what the name of it was now, but you can find it. So when I worked as a librarian, one of the books that I ordered into the library, and it was a hit. It went out so many times. My boss was a little dubious about letting me order this, but it was basically crafts with cat hair. So it's a book of like crafts that you can do with cat fur that you brush out of your cat. And we had a Farber Arts group that met upstairs in the community room at this little library, and I think every single one of them checked it out, and a bunch of other people checked it out, and that little book went out so much, and I thought it was just hilarious. But I mean, it's one of those things of crafty ladies that play with fiber will literally do anything. I have been told that you can spin milkweed. I know when I tried it, I had no luck with it. So milkweed silk is, oh, I don't know, probably about 2 to 3 inches long. And it's this beautiful iridescent white. But when I tried to spin it, it was brittle and I couldn't get it to actually spin into a fiber. But I've been told that people actually have spun it, and I'm sure that makes really amazing things. I mean, you'd have to collect a lot of it because there's not a huge amount in each thing. So, but yes, you can get fiber from rabbits, in theory from cats, dogs, pretty much anything. And I mean, if you look at the how you have to treat linen, for instance, to in order to get fiber out of linen, it's kind of amazing that our ancestors figured that one out, because cotton at least is intuitive. It's fluffy. It's easy. Wool is intuitive, although the wools from the older style of sheep, and Mom will undoubtedly correct me if I'm wrong, actually fell out. They shed. It's been the more recent breeds of sheep that have to be shorn. So milkweed is edible, but only when it's very, very young, and it's quite bitter. So it's honestly one of those things that you can eat milkweed pods, but they have to be cooked when they're very young, and you really need to change the water out. I have cooked with them. The texture is a little odd. The pods are a bit spongy and they're kind of fuzzy on the outside, and I am not a big fan of fuzzy plants in my mouth. So there's a number of different wild edible things that I don't like to eat just because of the texture. And I mean, I have one kid that won't eat peaches because of peach fuzz, so I get that it might just be a sensory thing for me. And Mom says that the term for the sheeps that shed is rue. Well, you can wear, I mean, obviously you can wear skins, but the thing with spinning fibers is that you don't have to kill the animal. Now, I mean, there's a point when you have to cull the herd. It's too big, you've got an animal that's obviously not genetically desirable to keep in, and you can't tell me that the ancients hadn't figured that out. So skins are one thing, but being able to use fiber is much more of a renewable resource long term. Beth, will you eat them peeled? I know we tried to get the kid to eat them peeled, but just because was thinking of the so if any of you going to the cosmetic chemists from the fiber conversation, silk comes from caterpillars, yes. So there's actually a specific kind. There are kinds of silk making caterpillars that occur here in the United States. They are not the fiber they produce is not as good as the fiber that is produced in China and Japan, because China and Japan have been breeding for the fiber for time immemorial. So they don't actually get the fiber after the caterpillars are already out of them, because if they do that, then the fibers are clipped by the caterpillar. The silkworms have to be killed and the cocoons washed gently, which also involves lysing and removing the caterpillar, in order for the silk to be the long prime threads of silk. So the thing that amuses me is that there is a product that is very popular in cosmetics, particularly when we're talking about hair care items, that involves silk. So if you ever see a shampoo or conditioner that talks about containing silk proteins, what that is they are hydrolyzing the what's left over after the initial cleaning of the silk. So it's not actual silk. It is the amino acids, the hydrolyzed amino acids that are left over as they are cleaning the silk. And I have some in my lab. It is not a nice substance. If you get a very bad quality one, it smells awful. One of the cosmetic chemists I know has described it as smelling like bad beef bouillon. And that's because it's had cooked caterpillar in it. So, now that none of you will ever buy a product that says it contains silk again, there is, and I also have some of this, powdered silk itself. And that is generally used in, that's more of a thing that'll go into like a lotion or a cream. And it's actually a very mild exfoliant, physical exfoliant for the skin. And it can also be, adds to the viscosity and stabilizes the emulsion. So, but yes, the cocoons are what's used for silkworms, and caterpillar soup is exactly what they're doing in order to get the silk. And obviously they let some hatch out because they have to have breeding for the next generation. But silkworms are an interesting moth, not a butterfly. And some of the Polyphemus moths here in the U.S., which are also in the same family, are absolutely amazing moths. They're huge. They're the size of my two hands together. I got to watch one. It was sitting on the fence where we were living in Ohio and laying eggs. And it was just amazing, amazing stuff. So, yeah, genetic engineering, and that's what I was talking about doing with the sheep in tanager fledglings, was genetic engineering for colors, including postulating that I had a tie-dye sheep and a plaid sheep, neither of which are terribly useful from a fiber perspective, because all of that's going to get mixed up So we had a conversation the other day. Actually, I think this might have been up over the supper table with North Texas troublemakers about spider cows. So there was indeed a breeding program that was attempting to genetically engineer cows to lactate spider silk proteins, in the idea that it could be used and made into fibers, because spider silk has some really amazing properties. And I have actually seen fabric that was made from spiders. It's been done in Asia. And the spider that they used produces a golden silk. So the fabric was this shimmery gold, and I mean, gosh, it's gorgeous. And I mean, I can just imagine. But it's not a viable commercial product right now. So it's one of those things that we will have to wait and see what genetic modification can do, because right now we're fighting uphill against the prejudices against genetic modification, and there's a lot of cool things that we could do, but there's also a lot of, and some of them are valid. I'm not going to say that somebody should go out there and make my crab raccoon. I posted the crab raccoon picture, and I immediately had 4 or 5 different people make the same comment of, well, that'll get the ethics committee on your case and your funding yanked. And I'm like, there's funding for this? I could get funding? So not all spider webs are sticky, RK. In fact, most spider webs are not sticky. Even some spider webs can turn it off and on, so they'll have sticky parts of the web, but they'll also have non-sticky parts of the web. It might have been goats. I think we were talking about cows, and it is the spiderweb proteins were being linked into the milk. So in theory, you could milk them and then use the milk through a chemical process to produce fibers. And spider silk is one of those things that if we could manage to produce it commercially, yeah, that would be pretty awesome. It is stronger than steel, and RK was talking about using it for an armor base, and you could do a woven armor. No, Ben, I drew a crab raccoon. Um, because a friend dared me. RK, that's because you don't notice the non-sticky spider webs. They just slide right off. It really depends on how many legs the spider cows have. I mean, if they're just regular cows, and we're not talking about chelicerae or pedipalps or anything, I'm good with regular cows. Even though, yes, I do know that cows kill people. Uh, yeah. Lois McMaster Bujold was a good one for exploring genetic modification in people and cows, and eh, um, she was a woman ahead of her time. It's a pity that the writing kind of went downhill after a certain point. Anyhow, I have taken up an hour of your time, and I'm now going to go anxiously wait for my husband and my child to return to me, which actually probably won't happen for another 10-15 minutes because the kid's only now getting out of work. But because I sent the husband for fetching the teenager, I think that means I got dinner duty handed back to me. So I'm going to go make a little fry up, and I'm thinking mushrooms and onions, and that's always a good start, and then I can just improvise from there. So thank you all for coming. It's always enjoyable to see the comments and to get to spend a little bit of time rambling. Today was even more rambly than usual, but it makes me feel better, and I'm definitely less anxious when I'm getting to turn my brain off from chewing over the things that I cannot change at this time. And so no spider cows with guns. Now I'm picturing a cow with a gun strapped to her back, pintle mount. Okay, now done now. All right, folks, y'all have a good night. Hopefully we haven't given you too many nightmares. I will talk to you next week.